So, what is the deficit? What is the answer? Now, here some people they say कि deficit is 200, that is borrowing. Some people their answer is 300. So, those people whose answer is 300, so they include disinvestment also under deficit. So, according to them, the total deficit is 300. Okay, so regarding borrowing, there is no problem. Borrowing definitely is a part of deficit, but whether this investment be included in deficit or not, deficits, I am concerned with fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit, it is 200 or 300. So if you say 200, it means you consider only borrowing. But those people who say that deficit should be 300, so they include disinvestment also. So it means regarding borrowing, there is no two school of thought. Everyone is ready. Everyone agrees that borrowing is a part of deficit. But the problem is with disinvestment. Whether disinvestment should be included or be a part of fiscal deficit or not. Some people say yes, some people say no. But what is the present practice in India? But before coming to this, again I will ask the same question. Borrowing and disinvestment, which one is better? The correct answer is no one. So never say that disinvestment is better than borrowing. Most of the people, they know that disinvestment is better than borrowing. But we have discussed, doesn't make a difference whether we go for borrowing or disinvestment. The future earning capacity is going to be hurt very, very badly in both the cases. So what is the present practice? We are going for only borrowing or disinvestment. Now, let us go to some early times. Till 1997, if you remember, one of the policy was very popular. It was deficit financing. This we have discussed. And that policy was given up. So prior to that, in India, the main indicator of the performance of the Indian economy on internal front, there was another indicator. It was budgetary deficit. So budgetary deficit was taken as a measure of the performance of the country on internal front. Now budgetary deficit, it has a link with deficit financing policy. Since deficit financing policy was given up, we had to give up the concept of budgetary deficit as well. In the Western country, since the beginning, they are using fiscal deficit as the main indicator of the performance. So then we move from budgetary deficit to fiscal deficit, mainly followed in the Western country. Now when we move from budgetary deficit to fiscal deficit, again the same problem came, 200 or 300. Regarding 200 borrowing, no issue, it's a part of deficit. But the concern was whether to include disinvestment under deficit or not. So what the government of India said, since nowhere in the world, disinvestment is a part of deficit or disinvestment is included in fiscal deficit. So we will follow the same practice, and this is the reason why in India disinvestment is not a part of fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is only 200. And the logic given by the government, it was not correct. See what is happening. Since disinvestment is not a part of deficit, it has given government of India a very good opportunity to improve the report card. If the government goes for more disinvestment, suppose this government decides to move from borrowing to disinvestment, doesn't matter whether we go for borrowing or disinvestment, impact will be same. So if the policy of the government to move from borrowing to disinvestment, let us go for more disinvestment and less borrowing, what will happen? In a real term, it won't affect the economy. But on paper, fiscal deficit is going to come down. And this is the practice followed for the last 6 to 7 years. We are going for more and more disinvestment. So what is happening? Since disinvestment is not a part of deficit in India, so as a result, fiscal deficit of the India, on paper, it has come down. It has given the government of India a very good opportunity to improve, I repeat, to improve the report card. And that's why fiscal deficit may be a better indicator for the Western country. It is not the good indicator of the performance of Indian economy. This is not the logic. Nowhere in the world fiscal deficit includes disinvestment. Now go to Western country. In this country, there is no concept of public sector and moreover, no concept of disinvestment. So for them there is no issue. Since disinvestment policy is of India, it is followed nowhere in the world. Developed countries, they always go for borrowing. So they include only borrowing as a part of fiscal deficit. But when we are trying to measure the performance of Indian economy, we should take that indicator which can be called the true reflector of the performance of India. So fiscal deficit, in my opinion, it is not a good indicator of the performance of Indian economy. Yes, because it includes only borrowing, it does not include disinvestment. Let us say by changing some information. Here, what is the fiscal deficit? 200. Only borrowing. Only borrowing. Disinvestment is not a part of fiscal deficit. Suppose this government decides to make some change in the policy, and now from borrowing, government managed only 100, and through disinvestment, government has managed 200. It means relying more on disinvestment and less on borrowing. Again, the same question, which one is better? No one. So in real term, it won't make any difference. It won't make any difference. But on paper, what will happen? Fiscal deficit will come down from 200 to 100. Report card of the government is going to improve. And that's why I am saying that fiscal deficit, it should include disinvestment when we try to measure Indian economy's performance. That is not happening. And can the fiscal deficit be brought to zero? Can the fiscal deficit be brought to zero? The answer is yes, very easy. What to do? Don't go for borrowing, go for selling everything. Sab kuch bech do and get the money only through disinvestment. That's why I'm saying instead of fiscal deficit, we should go for some new indicator that can measure the performance of Indian economy in a better manner. That indicator, maybe no one is talking about this. It's only my opinion, remember. But that is correct, I'm sure. Some people, I personally believe that we should go for designing some new indicator, maybe effective fiscal deficit. So that will include both borrowing and disinvestment. In that case, doesn't matter you are moving from borrowing to disinvestment or disinvestment to borrowing. Effective fiscal deficit is going to remain the same. But here, the government cannot go for that because here the report card is going to be bad. Now, government will definitely go for improving the report card. Yes, recently you can say Government of India has come out with a new concept, effective revenue deficit. The concept of effective revenue deficit has come, but that has come only because their report card seems to be improving. But here government cannot go for that. So disinvestment, repeat again, it is not a part of fiscal deficit. This you have to remember. And that's why it is only borrowing. To the extent of borrowing, it's the amount of the fiscal deficit. But that is not the correct indicator. So let us now again go to the original figure. So what is the fiscal deficit? It's a 200. Now listen to me carefully. The meaning of the word fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is a bigger concept than the revenue deficit. Fiscal deficit is calculated after considering both the expenditure of the government, both means total expenditure, and at the country level, both the expenses are equally important, revenue plus capital. Now see what is the meaning of the word fiscal deficit, because after explaining the things, I will be asking two questions from you, and I am sure that your one of the answer is going to be wrong. What is fiscal deficit? It's a contribution of, it's a relative thing. It's a contribution of borrowing in total expenditure of the government. I repeat again, contribution of borrowing in meeting total expenditure of the government. Yes, if the fiscal deficit is increasing, it means in meeting the total expenditure of the country, contribution of borrowing is increasing. It also means government's other sources, they have contributed less or they are contributing less. That's why we are going for more borrowing to finance the expenditure. Again, I would like to explain. Meaning of the word fiscal deficit, contribution of borrowing in total expenditure of the country. Total means revenue plus capital. And I repeat, at the country level, both the expenses are equally important. You got the meaning of the word fiscal deficit? Contribution of borrowing in total expenditure of the government. Let me ask two questions from you people. First is, fiscal deficit has increased. Fiscal deficit has increased. What is the meaning of that? So from my own experience, okay, I have come to know the answer. People normally say it means borrowing has increased. The first question, fiscal deficit has increased. It means, okay, you will say, answer is coming mostly from your side. It means borrowing has increased. Okay, fine. Come to the second one. Second question. Last year, total expenditure of the government, it was rupees 100. Last year, total expenditure of the government was 100 and contribution of borrowing, it was rupees 10. Contribution of borrowing in total expenditure, last year it was 10. This year, total expenditure of the government has increased from 100 to 200. Increased from 100 to 200, and this year contribution of borrowing in total expenditure of 200, it is rupees 16. It is rupees 16. Listen to the question carefully. Last year, total expenditure of the country, it was rupees 100 and the contribution of borrowing, it was rupees 10. This year, total expenditure of the government has increased from 100 to 200, and this year contribution of borrowing is rupees 16. So now my question is, as compared to the last year, this year fiscal deficit has increased or decreased? Okay. So most of the people, you say that fiscal deficit has decreased. Okay. This is the answer normally I get from you people. So two answers have come, okay, again the two questions. Now, okay, your first answer is incorrect. First answer is incorrect. When I asked the question, fiscal deficit has increased, so you said it means borrowing has increased. Fine. In the second case, borrowing for the last year, it was rupees 10. This year, it has increased to 16. So borrowing has increased, but still you say your fiscal deficit has come down. The second answer is correct. Fiscal deficit has come down. Still your borrowing in absolute term has increased from 10 to 16. So never say that fiscal deficit has increased means borrowing has increased. No. It's a contribution of borrowing in total expenditure. In the second question, contribution of borrowing in total expenditure last year, it was 10%. It was 10%. This year, it has come down to 8%. Although in absolute term, borrowing has increased from 10 to 16, but still fiscal deficit has come down. So second is the correct answer. It's always relative. Contribution of borrowing in total expenditure of the country. It has come down from 8%, 10% to 8%. The second answer is correct. It is possible that borrowing in absolute term has increased. Borrowing from absolute term has increased, but still fiscal deficit has come down. This is the case. In second case, borrowing in absolute term has increased from 10 to 16, but still fiscal deficit has come down from 10 to 8%. That is the correct answer. Because see, borrowing from absolute term, after seeing the borrowing and in absolute term, you cannot conclude anything. You cannot give a comment on the performance of the economy. So very simple. The underdeveloped countries, they are borrowing in millions of dollars. Country like India is borrowing in billions of dollars, and the developed countries, they are borrowing in trillions of rupees. So after seeing the borrowing in absolute term, you cannot comment on the financial condition of a country. You cannot comment on the financial condition of a person. Let me now ask one more question. Suppose you and me, you are in debt of rupees 30,000. You are in debt of 30,000 and my total debt, it is rupees 30 lakh. Your debt, outstanding debt, it is 30,000. My outstanding debt altogether is 30 lakh. So financially, whose condition is very poor? Yours or mine? See the question again. Your total debt is 30,000. My total debt outstanding is 30 lakh. So whose financial condition is more bad? Mine or yours? So some of the people among you, they will say, sir, cannot be said. Cannot be said. And that is the correct answer. Correct answer. Unless you compare your debt with your income, you cannot comment about the financial condition. After seeing the borrowing or the loan or the debt outstanding, you cannot comment on anything. Now let me give the complete information. Your monthly income is only rupees 5,000. Your monthly income is rupees 5,000 and my monthly income is rupees 1 crore. My monthly income is rupees 1 crore. So now information is complete. Now you can conclude कि your financial condition is more poor than me. Although your debt is very small, it's a 30,000, but since your monthly income is only 5,000, so your debt is equivalent to your 6 months income. Although my debts are very high in absolute term, 30 lakh, but when we see my income, when I see my income, it's a 1 crore per month. That is hardly 40% of 1 month's income. So true picture cannot be get after seeing the debt in absolute term. To have a real picture, your debts, they have to be compared with your income, then only you can comment on the financial condition. I hope you got the point. Now total borrowing of the country is a fiscal deficit. So 200 in our case. Okay. So to have a real picture, from here you cannot conclude anything. Next year, government has decided to borrow more than 15.5 lakh crore. So from here you cannot conclude anything. To have a real picture, it has to be expressed in terms of your income. But in case of India, in case of the whole world, the debts, the deficits, they are expressed in terms of GDP. GDP, gross domestic product. But you may get some confusion. Why not, sir, in terms of income? Remember the first class. Okay. Production, income and expenditure. All these are the three sides of the same coin. Whatever we produce, by the same amount income is generated and by the same amount expenditure is taking place. So production, income and expenditure, they are the three sides of the same coin. So why it is expressed in terms of GDP? So GDP means production. Total production of the country during 1 year. So total production means total income generated, because production and income, they are the two sides of the same coin. And this is the reason all the deficits in India, they are expressed in terms of GDP. GDP means production, but the income side of the GDP, that becomes more relevant. So let us now express this in terms of GDP. Our borrowing is 200. So I'm assuming that GDP of India is rupees 1,000. It's rupees 1,000. So GDP of India, it is rupees 1,000. I have assumed, simply taken a figure. Now find fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is what? Borrowing is a percentage of GDP. So borrowing is basically divided by GDP, and if we have to express in terms of percentage, multiplied by 100. So borrowing is 200, GDP is 1,000 multiplied by 100. So it means it's a 20%. It's a very high. I have simply taken some figure. So fiscal deficit is a 20% of GDP. It means whatever we are producing during the year, our total production, it is of 1,000 rupees. It means total income generated also during the year, it's 1,000, and contribution of borrowing is 20%. Okay. So 200 rupees we took loan. So it's a 20% of GDP, it's a very high. It means the remaining expenses, they will be met through other sources of income or maybe the receipt. I hope you got the picture. So yes, fiscal deficit and revenue deficit. Two deficits we have discussed. When I ask this question, what is the difference between revenue deficit and fiscal deficit, most of the people, they raise their hands. Even they fail to explain fiscal deficit, but I'm sure now you are comfortable. Can you differentiate between these two, revenue deficit and fiscal deficit? Yes. Now, fiscal deficit is a bigger concept. Fiscal deficit is a bigger concept because fiscal deficit is calculated after taking into account total expenditure of the country. Total means revenue plus capital. And that's why it's a bigger concept. Now, revenue deficit, it is partial in nature. While calculating revenue deficits, we don't consider both the expenditure. We consider only one of the expenditure, revenue expenditure. We don't consider capital expenditure. And remember, at the country level, both expenses are equally important. And moreover, we consider only revenue received. No doubt, our problem starts with the first account, in the revenue account. So that's why rectification will start only from the first account. But to have a real picture of the economy on internal front, it's not revenue deficit, it's a fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is a bigger concept and it is considered or calculated after taking into account, yes, all the expenditure of the country. So these two deficits, the main two deficits, I hope you are comfortable.
So we hope as you took it happily last year, you will again come to us for the revision for the preparation of this examination, and hope to see you soon in IQRA. Thank you.